The hot stove has been temporarily turned off, yes. The MLB lockout is nearly a month old, but glass half full here. We saw a flurry of moves across free agency before everything shut down, so let's talk about it with DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Garion Thorne. Starting on the mound, a couple big-name beefcakes will be donning new threads. So Steve's favorite Cy Young Award winner heading to Steve's favorite team, Robbie Ray, now a Mariner. Max Scherzer signed a historic deal with the Mets as well. Which was the more impactful deal in your opinion, Steve?
Look, I'm not going to be biased because,
Yes, you will.
My worlds collided when Robbie Ray, the Cy Young Award winner, goes to the Seattle Mariners. But here's the thing. The Seattle Mariners were a legit team last year, whether you want to believe it or not. It took almost to the end of the season to knock them out of playoff contention, and now they're making some big moves to continue that trend there. The AL West has been a division that really hasn't been all that competitive. That is going to change next year and for the years coming up here. Seattle is on the up and up here. You know, obviously when you get somebody like Max Scherzer in your rotation, that is a big time move. But the amount of money that they are paying him as he's trailing towards the age of 40, have to worry about that a little bit there. Robbie Ray made some massive adjustments with the Blue Jays. Garion can talk about that himself. Limiting fly balls, limiting the home runs, getting those strikeouts up. I love this move for the Mariners.
Gary and Met said if you can't beat them, sign them.
Yeah. I mean, look, nothing against the amazing Robbie Ray, although I guess we have to check in and see how tight Seattle makes their pants.
Oh!
Woo! On how successful he's going to be in Seattle. I just feel like when someone who has led all of Major League Baseball in terms of pitchers in Fangraphs WAR since 2015, I know he's old, but I'm just not ready to give up on Max Scherzer yet. I think that's got to be the more impactful of these two deals. And I also think it matters where he signed with the New York Mets. I mean, as we saw this season and as we see every single year, the NL East is consistently a mess. And every year it feels like 85 to 100 wins could possibly win that division. So when you add someone who's been as impactful in terms of winning to that division, to a team that's already got Jacob deGrom and really could have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball if it just stays healthy. I know that's a big question mark with the Mets all the time. I just feel like that throws such a chaos agent into a division that is already full of chaos agents. So it's probably going to be more impactful just because of all that. But that two-horse race, maybe 2.5 if you count the Angels in the AL West, is going to be really exciting.
By the way, Mariners aiming to end the longest active postseason drought in major North American professional sports.
They came close.
Yes, certainly did, and they have you supporting them, Steve, which means everything, I'm sure. Very motivating. The Rangers were making it rain here, dudes, adding Corey Seager and Marcus Semien on massive contracts. Both dudes should provide some much-needed help to a lineup that was one of the worst in baseball last season. So John Gray has been added to the Texas rotation. How soon until this team is a contender in the AL West, Garion?
Probably 2023,
okay.
Optimistically. I just don't see it happening next season. I mean, as we already talked about, the Mariners are loading up. Like, the Mariners are just farther along in this same process, and I think they have better prospects. And now they're adding pieces where it feels like Texas just realized they're going to have to overpay for a couple of pieces that might seem like they're a waste in the immediate future, but maybe start to pay dividends in year 3, year 4 of those contracts as their team kind of rounds into form. Like, I like some of the guys in Texas's rotation. Don't get me wrong. I think Spencer Howard has the potential to be a very good starting pitcher. Taylor Hearn showed a lot towards the end of the season, but the Astros are the Astros. I think the Mariners are a threat to win 90 games. And at some point, maybe the Angels will have a season where Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, and Anthony Rendon are all healthy. And you'd have to think they're at least a threat for a wild card spot in the American League. So Texas was a team dead last in WRC plus in the American League last season. They're better, but they were so bad last year that I don't really think it makes all that big an impact.
Steve, currently constructed pitching staff still remains a mess, feels like a mess, but they do appear to still have about $20 million to spend in free agency left once the season and everything gets back on track. So they could address some of those needs.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, they did what they needed to do to add to that lineup that was in so desperate need of some bats. They need to almost completely overhaul their rotation. Now, John Gray is a nice start, okay? Maybe that's where you start there, but, you know, I think Gary was being a little kind when he's saying, that it's okay. I mean, Spencer Howard has, a lot of work to do. The Rangers do have some prospects in the minor leagues that will, fill that void, hopefully. Jack Leiter's down there, Cole Wynn's down there. So there are some names. But as it comes to this season, they're going to be giving up a ton of runs still. So they're going to score some more runs than they did last year, but they're also going to be giving up a ton in the process too. So it's a good starting point for the Rangers. But it's at an unfortunate time because, like we just said, the Mariners are starting to load up. What will the Astros look like there? That's going to be a lot tighter division than it's been, but the Rangers, I think, are still at least 2 years away from really contending.
Steve, which other signings, though, do you think will have a major impact in 2022?
Yeah, so look, there's some really big names that are out on the market right now too, but it's just hard to figure out where some of these guys are going to go. There, like some names like Trevor Story still on the free agent market. The shortstop position, it felt like this free agent market has just been so deep with all the games that have been out there. Corey Seager's already been signed by the Rangers. Carlos Correa is still out there too, but I think Trevor Story is going to be one of the bigger signings for a team this upcoming offseason. I don't feel like that we get enough look at Trevor Story because he's been on the Rockies for so long, but this guy is just so uber talented, has speed, has power, really good defensively in the middle of the field. That's going to be the biggest signing, I think, that's yet to be done.
A couple guys who are looked at as some Yankees free agent targets there. Garion, what do you think?
In terms of guys yet to sign, we've still obviously got to see where Story goes. We got to see where Correa goes. In terms of guys who have already signed who could make a huge impact or should make a huge impact in teams that will at least be competitive for the playoffs. We already talked about the Mets and what they did with Max Scherzer. So you add Starling Marte, who I think kind of quietly, just because he was traded last season, it feels like he's traded every year or he's hurt. Like, he's really just one of the most inconsistent players for things kind of outside of his control, but he's coming off easily the best season of his career. And the Mets threw a lot of money at him to kind of stabilize the middle of their outfield. So if that goes well, along with the Scherzer stuff, again, I think the Mets, I feel like everyone's a contender in the National League East, but they have to be a serious threat. And then we talked about Robbie Ray, the guy the Jays threw a lot of money at to replace Robbie Ray, Kevin Gausman, who's probably going to start opening day for them. The Jays were a team that by Pythagorean wins were 99-63. It really does seem like they're going to be a threat, especially if they get some development from that nice young offensive core. So whether or not Gausman's sort of revival in San Francisco is real, and if he can translate that to Toronto, that's going to be one of the huge storylines in the American League.
You guys mentioned Correa already. His free agency will be one of the most compelling storylines to monitor once the offseason resumes here. Garion, where do you think he ends up?
I think it's probably like a 3-horse race at this point. I just don't think the Astros have appeared all that interested. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think it's either the Yankees are going to really just fork over a ton of cash. We already know that the Tigers offered him a massive contract. He's obviously got a connection there with A.J. Hinch. Maybe they're willing to go a little bit higher once they're allowed to get back to the negotiating table. And I think the last couple of weeks, we've kind of got some steam about like the Chicago Cubs maybe being tied to this guy. I have no idea what the Cubs are doing. It seemed like they were very ready and very content to just enter a rebuild, and then they threw a bunch of money at Marcus Stroman. So I don't know what's going on with the Cubs necessarily, but they are definitely a dark horse just because they do have the money now to make a big impact sign.
Okay, what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think that Correa ends up with the Dodgers. They lost out on Corey Seager, so now they have this abundance of money that they can use. Now, obviously, they have Trey Turner. He could go to his natural position, but why would you not want to get someone like Carlos Correa? You put Trey Turner at second, and then if Justin Turner is healthy, you have him at third base. That side of the infield would just be so stellar with those two guys there, and then you get Trey Turner over at second base. I think the Dodgers are going to really push for Carlos Correa after losing on Corey Seager, so I think that's likely a landing spot for him.
And he's absolutely loving all the other shortstop signing these like massive deals right now. Plenty of other big names still out there like Freddie Freeman, Chris Bryant, Trevor Story, you guys have also mentioned. Can you give us your best prediction on where a current free agent will end up, Steve?
I love Chris Bryant going to the Mariners. I think that's going to be a legitimate spot for him there. Obviously, they have Julio Rodriguez down in the minor leagues, basically just waiting to unleash him. But I think Bryant would fit really well in that Mariners team who have been so uber aggressive in this offseason. I think that's going to be their biggest signing this offseason.
Garion, what do you got?
I think it's probably just easier to prognosticate where these shortstops are going to end up just because the market has probably settled the most of any position. We know the Yankees are going to sign one of Carlos Correa or Trevor Story. I can't definitively say which one it is, but they are not leaving this offseason without one of those two dudes, because if they figured out anything in 2021, it's that Gleyber Torres is not a shortstop, and they really need to appease this fan base, who I guess feel like they're in a drought. I don't know. Yankees fans are weird, but I would probably say Trevor Story is the one who ends up in New York. That just seems to be where there's been a lot of smoke so far this offseason, so I'll say Story to the Yankees.
All right, thanks, guys. Here's hoping baseball can figure things out soon after the new year.